Greetings, brothers and sisters, and other Hollywood celebrities dropping like M&F and flies.
They're dropping like flies.
Listen, people are dropping like flies out there.
I am
Boop.
stop.
We're dropping like flies around here.
We're dropping like flies here. Jeez, sir, 2 more just went down. Dropping like flies.
Too many people around here been dropping like flies already, and where's that getting us, huh? Nowhere. Fast.
Biden's being Biden's being an extremist.
Crush that fly.
So many different tabs I have open I have to get through here. A crazy amount. Because I haven't done anything in a couple of days here. I got recommended this morning. Damian Rice finds out about Sinead O'Connor's death during a concert in Valencia. It's Val something. Boston, Spain. He's in Boston, Spain. I have some of Damian Rice's music on my phone. If you've ever seen the AOL sessions with him, and I have a lot of Irish and Scottish, not a lot, but ones that I know about. For whatever reason, I like that type of music. But he finds out mid-concert he's in Spain, Boston, Spain. It's kind of interesting. And he plays Nothing Compares to You.
I've never played this before, but maybe I can. Wow, maybe Sinead can help. It's been 7 hours and 16 since you took your love away. It's been there now all day.
It's kind of interesting because he doesn't know the words. Whatever. You guys can take a look at that if you want. And I thought it was, I couldn't remember what Sinead O'Connor died from. Like, this is a couple weeks ago, a month ago, I don't know. Like, there's just so much, I could almost remember nothing about it other than that she recently died. So one of my viewers sent me this. It's a blast from the past.
Y'all ever thought about kissing each other? We're twin brothers, we're blood. Like, do you know how weird that sounds? That gets off the chain, bro. Don't make it weird. I can't believe you guys even think like that. That's so weird. Like, do you know who I am, man? I don't play like that. We don't play like that.
They don't play like that. They don't. Stop capping. I forgot about that, and I got to remember to bring it back. This is before they made out, and I don't know whether they made out for a what do you call that thing? Wherever they do. Okay, I'm now editing, so I'm going to jump in here. Cameo. I couldn't remember it then, but it's Cameo. They make these appearances on Cameo, paid appearances. The Cameo app or whatever it is. I'm not sure if that's why they were making out, because somebody paid them to do it or whatever it is, but one of these guys is very adamant that he's a top. Okay, I uploaded this video twice already, and 3 times actually, because I got copyrighted on something, and then I took that out. It was a snake eating its own tail, and then you use some hand sanitizer, and it is the snake lets go. So not really important to the video, but kind of interesting. And it's king snake, they eat other snakes. And so then I uploaded again, and there was they demonetized it. So first there was a copyright strike, and then they demonetized the video. And I looked at the video, and the only thing I could see that would cause it to get flagged by the bots was a Hunter Biden video, in which Hunter is getting the riot act read to him by his brother's widow he was banging for a while. I had to tell the story of him, or when she took his handgun away because she thought he was going to self-harm, and she threw it away next to a high school in a trash can. She just put it in a trash can, and a homeless guy got it. Secret Service got involved. It's a big story. But while she's yelling at him, she's like she's reading him the riot act. He picks up a crack, boop, and he starts to smoke it, like while she's yelling at him on the phone, and he's videoing the call. He's videoing himself while he talks to her for no apparent reason. Like he just was like walking around incriminating himself. And she gets done talking, and the last word she said was therapy. And as soon as she said therapy, he puts the crack pipe up to his mouth. We have to go to see a therapist or a counselor or whatever it is. And then he's smoking, and she's waiting for him to respond. She's like, Hunter? Yeah, she's like bummed that he's not talking, but he's gone off to crackland. She mentions rehab and things like this. And so I think that video YouTube flagged it for demonetization, which is, we'll see. If you're watching this and, you see ads, then that's what's happened. Today's Friday, August 11th. I don't want to be doing this for days. And, I'll go through the video one more time while it's being uploaded to make sure there's nothing in it. I'm getting behind, but I had a video yesterday I had some issues with on my other channel. So there's all of that. But, so here's the video. Here's the rest of the video. You can find the Hunter video somewhere. One of my viewers sent it to me on Instagram. I'm sure you can find it. It's kind of funny because of the whole exchange. But anyways, let's get back to it here. Mitch McConnell is back doing what he loves here. They're yelling retire at him. So that happened. Top New York City cancer doctor kills herself and her 4-month-old baby. I don't know why I have that. Somebody must have sent it on Instagram. U.S. scientists repeat fusion ignition breakthrough for the second time. So they have some way of doing fusion, which isn't great for us, I'm sure. You have the right to remain silent. Impossible. I'm a vegan. One of my viewers sent me that. Lizzo's biographer also quit, and she's got more lawsuits. Lizzo's claiming she's a wonderful person, and it's all these people are attacking her. But this is the Allison on Tuesday shared on social media she was tapped to direct Lizzo's documentary Love Lizzo, and traveled with the singer briefly in 2019, but decided to walk away after about 2 weeks. I was treated with such disrespect by her. I witnessed how arrogant and self-centered and unkind she is. So there's, the stuff's coming out about Lizzo. She sucks. And we'll see if she gets canceled. But, she's a disaster. Like everybody, realizes that she's a total piece of boop. Sandra Bullock's longtime partner, Brian Randall, dead at 57 after battling ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. Something more about him on my other toolbar. Dr. Tiffany has a COVID update for you.
Right now. This surge is being driven by several variants, including the Eris variant, the FU1 variant, and Arcturus, and a whole bunch of others. So there'll be more on that in my next update video, which will be either later today or tomorrow. But in the meantime, wear your mask. This is the time that we put them on. And also the XBB booster, which will cover all of the variants going around, is going to likely be released in mid-September and to the end of September.
The XBB booster sounds awesome. Let's listen to Dr. Tiffany.
The symptoms of this surge are just COVID symptoms, okay? There's not anything super unique about any one of these variants. They can all get you sick. They can all kill you. They're all about the same as far as severity.
Okay, Dr. Tiffany laid down some truth here. Somebody else sent me something this morning. I'm not going to show you that. I X'd out of it, but I didn't really understand it. It was a tweet. Maybe it said somebody famous. But COVID, they're coming back around with COVID now that it's coming towards fall.
First tour in LA as someone who still doesn't care to be infected with COVID. Here's what's in my bag if you want to see all the details. There's a whole video on that. But don't look at the comments. It is a cesspool of ableist garbage. Anyway, I decided that if I was going to go at all, I was not only going to keep myself safe, but give others the option to keep themselves safe as well. So I brought a bunch of extra masks. Spoilers, no one took me up on it, but I was moving pretty quickly through crowds because, I didn't want to spend a lot of time in crowded spaces. That said, in the past when I have made the offer, people take them. It is what it is. But I'm not going to the show out of altruism, of course. I'm going because I want to hear the music. The same reason anybody else goes to a show. I haven't been to many concerts.
So she's speeded this thing up. Because
since 2020, and never in my life have I been to a show of this scale. So while I do go more places for my job as a photographer than a lot of chronically ill people are able to do right now.
She's chronically ill. She's young. She must be in her 30s or early 40s. She's going to see Taylor Swift, and she's going to mask up.
This pandemic yet again surges, this time unabated. I definitely had a lot less information going into this than, say, some of my workspaces. And since I'm going alone, I have to be ready to handle not only airborne mitigation on my own, but also any of my usual chronic illness symptoms that may come up. So as I go over in my What's in My Bag video, I used Lear's xylitol nasal spray, as well as kept the PORE, P-O-R-E, personal HEPA filter close at hand, on top of the usual face mask, which, as you can see, I accounted for in my makeup routine. I like to go really hard on the eye makeup because no one's going to see anything below it. If you're unfamiliar with Taylor Swift, I'm channeling her Lover album for this makeup and outfit. I chose earrings on the smaller side that would minimally interfere with my mask. I figured I was going to be really sweaty, so I just pulled my bangs back. As a fellow Sagittarius, we're doing an homage to the archer with the necklaces, and as you can see, I nailed it on the location of the heart. It doesn't interfere with my mask at all.
Good, you got the heart in there over your Illuminati eye with the come on, you could give her some props because she got her Taylor Swift eye makeup on, and it didn't interfere with her mask. What talent.
All right, time to drive to the show. August 3rd was a beautiful day in LA. Here's the full fit check. Please ignore water from washing my hands on my dress. If you're wondering whether or not middle-aged men will still call you if you wear a mask, the answer is yes. So the first thing I did, which I did not...
So apparently, this is happening again. Doris Burks deserves this. So this came up on Facebook, and she doesn't. Like I've talked about how Mark Jackson and Jeff Van Gundy and Mike Breen have been the best announcing team. And, there's all these people talking about it on, various, that they've been fired by ESPN and they were at the top of their game, right? They were the most entertaining, and this is entertainment, right? All sports is entertainment. It is considered entertainment and not sports. That's why they can rig games legally. So it's, a more compelling version of WWE where they can manipulate the outcomes. They can do things to, keep the business entertaining for people. And of course, the gambling aspect. And so this person, right, Doris Burke is about to get ESPN's top job calling the NBA Finals. If any deserves this, it's her because you can't find a better resume than this. Worked at ESPN in various positions since 1981, radio and TV voice for the New York Liberty, covered men's and women's college basketball, first woman to be commentator for the Knicks on radio and TV, first woman to be game analyst for the NBA Finals, first woman to call the conference finals, NBA Finals on radio, sideline reporter for NBA Finals 10 years. In the Basketball Hall of Fame for winning the Kurt Gowdy Media Award for outstanding broadcasting. The only problem with this is she doesn't deserve the job because she's not good at it. Like, it's not a matter of her resume. You can hang around long enough at some place and get a job, right? Or move up in the corporation just because you've been there so long. And she's not a good announcer. She's probably the worst other than this guy's brother, Stan Van Gundy. Like, they were just announcers. When I hear that they're going to be calling the game, I'm like, oh, this isn't going to be as good. Because their job isn't to know a lot about basketball. Like, that's, there isn't all that much to know. The offenses are not that complex, nor are the defenses. It doesn't take you long to figure out the strategy of each team, like who they want to shoot, where they're going to give up, on defense, where they're going to give up. They're going to have to give up something because it's an offensive game. And so they're going to let certain players be open if they double team, these types of things. And they run, various types of offenses, but they're not all that complex to analyze. And they don't even talk about that much in the game. And so the announcer's job is to be entertaining. And Doris Burke is very cringe. Like, she seems like a nice person, but it's like your grandmother watching a basketball game with your grandmother and her commenting on it. It's just, she just doesn't have what it takes to make the game better by her enthusiasm or whatever it is, right? There are, good announcers. Reggie Miller is another good announcer, and I don't like Reggie Miller. I never liked him as a player back then when I, watched basketball more frequently. He's an excellent announcer. But this guy's brother, Stan Van Gundy, was announcing with Reggie Miller, and I was like, oh, that's going to suck worse. Like, when Doris Burke is going to announce the game, it's not going to be as good. The quality of the entertainment isn't as good. The announcers actually provide quite a bit of making the thing watchable or unwatchable. And she's going to make it more unwatchable. So, yeah, she hung around, right? She got the job because Jeff Van Gundy fought for her and got her to be an announcer, when she was a sideline reporter. And, Jeff Van Gundy is funny. And Mark Jackson and him together are funny. And she'll be calling it with this guy, Mike Breen, who probably isn't that psyched because he already talked about he can't believe they broke up that team. And it doesn't seem to be as much of a money consideration as they wanted a woman to be in the chair for the NBA Finals, because they keep on forcing women into this arena that is, a male-dominated audience. It's like 70% of the audience is men, even more. And they keep on pushing women into the broadcasting element of this thing. Like, wherever, men have like a refuge, they have a man cave, they are pushing women and these, woke agenda into it, right? Like, you can't escape it. Like, men just don't have a place to go anymore, right? Where women aren't trying to invade and take over. I just want to add something to this in the editing process. And, to me, this is another function of the apocalypse, because there are things that are happening now that wouldn't happen in any other time period. Disney is this big conglomerate that owns Universal and Marvel and has all this successful content, and they have the Disney Channel, and they have the Disney Parks, and they have ABC Network, and they have ESPN Network, and, all these other things. They have a lot of, it's a big conglomerate, right? It has a lot of various, money-making components, right? And the NBA is down in ratings, I think, still since the BLM stuff. I'm not sure, but the entertainment on the NBA level has gotten better in the post-COVID world. The last couple seasons have been, excellent in terms of parody, and, you're talking about something being a show and being entertaining. And these guys are professionally renowned in the industry of sports broadcasting because they're good at their job. There might be some people who don't like Mark Jackson or Jeff Van Gundy for some reason or another. Mike Breen, he's just the announcer. The other guys are the play-by-play guys. But they enhance your experience of watching the game. And, I've noticed this as I've gotten older and I'm, doing what I do here, all the various bells and whistles and the way that they, put in subtle agenda, whatever's going on with the social agenda. There'll be little jabs, a little bit of, they're being handled and, promotional stuff that they're saying to push the social and globalist agenda. Jeff Van Gundy pushed back a little bit on some of these things. So I would notice that, right? I'm aware of these things because I watch the show within the show. I watch the movie within the movie, and I watch the game within the game. And in a world that the ratings used to be the biggest aspect of it, and the customer is always right, you wouldn't fire this team of people. There is some talk about both Jeff Van Gundy and Mark Jackson coaching again, and everyone said, oh, that'll be a bummer because it'll break up that good broadcasting team. They're just really good at it. Not just the NBA Finals, but all the playoff games leading up to it, and then some regular season games as well. And, they were considered maybe the best in the business. So why would you break that team up if it wasn't for money, which Disney should have enough money for this, right? I mean, they're making Jeff Van Gundy and Mark Jackson are making $2 million a year. And are they going to pay Doris Burke less? Right? Like, as a woman coming in, she's going to get paid less. Immediately, that's going to raise red flags. I just looked it up, and her old salary was $1 million a year. She has to get some sort of a bump. I mean, they can say, all right, we're cutting costs. So let's say they give her an extra $500,000, whatever it might be, or another $1 million, and she's making whatever those guys were making. They bring in Doc Rivers, whatever. And so if it wasn't a political decision and it wasn't a monetary decision, they were pissed at Jeff Van Gundy always calling out the NBA. There was pressure from the NBA to fire him or whatever reason something happened, right? There wasn't some scandal or something like that. Then why take away what the people want, right? You understand this, that like just because she has a resume, it isn't that kind of a job. It's a job where ratings and entertainment and customer satisfaction and giving people a reason to tune in. So there's times during the game where there's stoppages, and I tape the game so I can fast forward through that stuff. But there are occasions where I might listen to the banter between the announcers, and I'd be more likely to listen to Jeff Van Gundy and Mark Jackson talk about things during the free throws or things that where it's dead time or if it's a blowout, because it's entertaining, right? It's just like listening to a talk radio show or you guys listening to me here. Some people are interesting in terms of their conversations. It's like listening to podcasts. And Doris Burke isn't one of those people. She's a nice person, but not an interesting one. And she's not compelling. And, there might be some people like her or whatever, but definitely most people would agree that there's a entertainment loss here. And the fact that ESPN is doing that, and you see this so much where corporations just give an big FU to their customers, right? They just don't care. And it started happening in 2015 when they changed they had this North Carolina bathroom bill that said you had to be a biological male to go into the men's room and a biological female to go in the ladies' room, something that was always there, an unspoken rule, but then they started to change this idea of gender. And 60% of people agreed with it. Only like 20% of people, 23% of people disagreed, and 18% weren't sure. And so the majority of people were in favor of the North Carolina bill, but North Carolina got punished. The NBA took their all-star game from them, and corporations and banks and these, big businesses started to go against what was popular, and I've never seen anything like that. Celebrities and all these people. It was a change where they were telling the customers and everyone else, we don't care what you think. We don't care what your position is. Because, the business is in the past that always catered to what the masses want. And that was something new. And you see this here. It's a continuation of that. And at least in part, it's because she's a woman. And they're putting a woman in this job. And whether you want to see it or not as a viewer, you can either choose to not watch the NBA, turn off the volume, and you're still going to, watch the game, or you can just suck it up, but they're not about pleasing you, right? They're not about keeping you happy. Anyways, let's move on here. Israeli leader halts bill against Christian proselytizing. And this is to do with Kennedy. I probably should have put this on my other side of this toolbar for my other channel. But Kennedy said that Israel is a very free place. But this says here, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Wednesday, and again, I don't know who the Palestinian leader is. Like that's, part of what I've been saying. On Wednesday said he would prevent the passage of a proposal by a powerful ally. Said he would prevent the passage of a proposal by a powerful ally in his governing coalition to punish Christian proselytizing with jail time. And so this is being by someone in his government, someone like, I don't know how their government works, probably a little bit more like the British government, that somebody has a conservative. Here, look, they have an ad coming up here for Moderna. This is the Associated Press. And it is, I think, run by, if I'm not mistaken, it's a part of Reuters. And is that owned by the Rothschilds? I'm not sure. But anyways, this is just a way to expose what Kennedy was saying, because he said there's freedom of religion there, and they have so many freedoms, and they want to put Christians in jail for going out and trying to recruit more Christians. And this guy's blocking it, but still, it gives you a sense of the freedoms that are available in that country. Native American group threatens Washington Commanders with boycott over name change. A Native American group has threatened the Washington Commanders team with if the team does not revert to its older title of the Redskins. The group, Native American Guardians Association, has asked the team to change its name back to the Redskins in a letter dated Monday. The team decided to change its name in 2020, settling with the new name, the Commanders. And so this is, I guess, a powerful Native American group. And they said here, they want to have a national boycott if they don't change the name to Redskins for some reason, which other Native American groups found offensive. So it's why they changed their name in the first place. So that's how it works. Okay, she's at Whole Foods.
I'm at Whole Foods and I'm about to pay for my groceries with my... That's the coolest thing ever.
It's the coolest thing ever. She was able to scan her palm. She doesn't have to bring her phone even, and she doesn't have to bring her credit cards. All she has to do is have her hand, and Whole Foods will let you pay with your handprint. Aren't they great? Aren't they awesome at Whole Foods? Car crashes into second floor of Pennsylvania home left dangling from roof in unintentional act. Here it is. A car launched into the air, landed in a second floor window of a Pennsylvania home, where remained dangling on Sunday afternoon in a scene straight out of the action movie. Look, like that's great. I don't even know how it did that. I don't know where it launched from. There's no highway. I don't know what's over here. This has happened where a lot of cars are driving into houses. And Anne Heche, that was like the first celebrity, but a few celebrities have driven into houses. I think Pete Davidson was one of them or something. People are driving into buildings left and right. Like, it's just a thing that's happening. One of my viewers sent me this. In British Columbia, the eagles are doing what the seagulls are doing. Like birds, and they've realized that people are a bunch of bonus holes, and they can just go take your lunch money.
What's he want, your fish, Matt? That's the craziest thing I've ever seen. What's going on with this guy? Hey! Alright.
So they just come up and take your stuff. We lived near Coeur d'Alene, Idaho for a little bit. And we were driving there to Coeur d'Alene. We were about an hour away from Moscow, Idaho. And we drove by like a frozen lake, and there was like 50 bald eagles, like crazy stuff. We see them everywhere, but they're particularly in this is in British Columbia. And they're big birds with talons and a beak, and if their fear of humans is the only thing that keeps them away. And now they just don't have it, right? And I think it's a felony to kill a bald eagle. Dr. Casper, Cha-Cha slide creator, dies at 58. So this guy's a professional dancer, and I'm not sure what he died of. I don't think they tell you. Governor Healy asked residents to house migrant families amid growing shelter crisis. And this is from Channel 25 News in Boston. And I don't know if there's all kinds of ads here. But they have The state shelters are reaching capacity, and now the governor is asking residents to help by opening their doors. This is part of Governor Maura Healey's announcement, and she's looking for help from the federal government. And so they are, I guess, bringing all these immigrants into these northern liberal cities. We saw that with DeSantis.
Understand my hesitation. I've been a teacher for 7 years, and I've loved most of every second of it. Yeah, the grading is annoying, the pay is low, the classes are overfilled, but I love seeing the students learn, grow, and make those connections, having those aha moments. And I used to think that being a teacher was pretty straightforward, pretty self-explanatory. Teach kids how to read, teach kids how to write, teach kids history, have students question authority, narratives, and paradoxes, and let the students connect the dots on their own. Let the students come to their own conclusions about things. At the very minimum, my job is to teach students that history is very, very complicated, because people are very, very complicated. But what's happening nowadays is that there's a push to indoctrinate kids. There's a push to sexualize children, and there's a push to separate kids from families, to either directly or indirectly sever those ties, have kids dislike their parents, dislike their family, and have parental power be transferred from the parents to some sort of state authority. Teachers, school districts, principals, superintendents, state congresspeople, CPS, whatever you want to call it.
Okay, so there's more to come here from this guy, this teacher. One of my viewers sent me this like 3-4 days ago. And I opened it up, and I didn't get a chance to watch it. And when the guy first started to talk, I read the caption, or I read, the beginning of the caption. It was about how, what this guy's saying now about kids being indoctrinated. But when I first saw this person and heard him talk, I thought he was liberal. He seemed maybe a little bit effeminate. And I thought he was going to be saying things that come from a liberal person indoctrinating kids, right? Some liberal teacher. I got lots of things that people send me like that. That women, well, you saw a few of them already today. That people come from a liberal perspective, and people send me stuff like that all the time. Sometimes they can't even use it. It's not really what I do here or whatever. Or just something that YouTube will have a problem with, or I'm not really agreeing with whatever was sent to me, or I don't find it valuable. And so I get sent stuff that oftentimes is liberal people demonstrating the stuff that, we all are perplexed how far they have gone into madness, right? And this is important because this guy doesn't seem like a conservative. He doesn't seem like somebody on the right at all. And, I'm going to cover this in a comment I just received. I'll read the comment at the end of this video after I get through all the stuff I've already done here. And I got a few more little segments to get through. And, somebody's accusing me of doing something, even though I made it clear why I was doing it, right? When people can't even hear you, it happens to me all the time. No matter how clear I make things, people still misinterpret my actions, right? So I, want to read that comment. It's about my coverage of RFK Jr. and his view on Palestine and the rest of it. But when something comes from a person if a liberal person comes out and says, wow, things have gotten crazy. When someone who isn't a part of the opposition, isn't a part of the group that you would think would have this issue, right? This person seems like a liberal, progressive, sort of educated person who, would normally be a liberal and normally agree with what's going on with teaching and the rest of it. If it was a conservative person, a Republican person, it doesn't carry as much weight because that's what they're supposed to think, right? That's what they're all trained to think. But when it's from the demographic that's almost like a whistleblower, somebody who's on the inside and they are like, wow, they've gone too far, it always has more power, right? It always is, it's more legitimate because it's a person who is going against their group and their primary belief system and the category of people, the box that they've been put in by society.
And as a teacher, I can't agree to that. I can't say yes to that. I'm not going to be used as an agent to confuse kids, because that's literally the opposite of what teachers are supposed to do. We're not supposed to confuse kids. And that's what's happening. But this speaks to something greater, I think. The United States is falling apart. I don't know how I feel about teaching the history of a dying empire and not standing up and doing something more to stop it. It feels like I'm stuck within those four walls fighting back this oppressive wave that's sweeping over the country of depression, of pessimism, of despair, nihilism, fatalism, Gnosticism. To be an American, you're supposed to be rebellious. You're supposed to fight against tyranny. You're supposed to look at people with more power than you and say, no, like, I have the ability to live my life. If I can sum up the United States in one sentence, of course, ideally, would be, you have a right to not have the boot of government stomp on your face. And if we have parts of our government in the United States that insist on stomping on people's faces, and it's up to the people to stand up to it. And that's what I'm doing right here.
Okay, so at the beginning of my Kennedy narration, the first one, 2 days ago on my other channel, I talked about the idea of being blackpilled. And this is a person who, everyone gets a sense that things are breaking down. And it's so widespread that it's hard for people to even conceive of. People can focus in on one piece or another. And I made a long voiceover last night. And what happened was, my wife and I were tired. We started to, watch TV early. We were both like kind of just feeling weird and out of it. And I didn't check to see if my video had cleared, my video that is on my other channel this morning on today's Thursday, August 10th. And so I looked at it, and sometimes the videos upload, but they don't process. YouTube has to process the video, and it just doesn't do it. And it happens, infrequently. Sometimes it takes longer to process than normal. But this one took, it was 3 or 4 hours that it hadn't processed. And so I re-uploaded the video and then had a copyright issue. Even though I took like some of my old videos, sometimes when I'm doing a voiceover, I'll just show a clip of one of my old videos. You guys, who watch my videos understand that. I'll just put an old video in there so people have something to look at when I'm talking. Sometimes it's consistent with what I'm saying. Sometimes it's kind of similar, especially if I'm covering the same subject over a couple day period. And they copyrighted the Larry David Show stuff, even though they didn't copyright it on this. When I put it up there, it was bizarre, right? And it was without audio. It was just strange. And that has happened to me more than once. And so it was already 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock, and I uploaded it again, and I went to bed, and I knew I wasn't going to release it till this morning. And that's the video that's up on my other channel. So I have 2 videos today that are going to be up because of that. Like I didn't put a video up yesterday because of that. Just a weird thing that happened. And last night I did a voiceover that I was going to put up today on my other channel, or I was going to put the voiceover in here, but I'm going to put it up on my other channel. I didn't know which. And it talked about all this stuff with the collapse of the system, right? And, people are having trouble accepting that everything we're seeing is something that's not fixable. It's not something we can reverse. It's not something that can be fixed or changed. And it's just our system collapsing. And there's so many tell signs, but we haven't seen it before. And part of us doesn't believe, we're too big to fail. And because we're dependent on the system, it won't collapse. But this person's even seeing it, right? People are starting to see it, but they just don't know what to do with it, right? And accepting it is the biggest part. Because, people, it's scary to realize the system you're 100% dependent on is collapsing. And I'm going to cover this again in this comment I'm going to get to. And then even more so, I'm going to put out a voiceover, I've already done, like whenever that is, tomorrow, I guess, And I'll have 2 videos on that channel, or maybe I'll put it in the beginning of the video. I might as well just put it in the beginning of my video tomorrow because of what's happened here, right? It'll just be a longer video. It's like half-hour long. But anyways, let's get into the other stuff here. Oh, you can see that testicular injuries among female athletes has spiked since 2020. Now, I'm not sure about the legitimacy of this graph, but I do believe this is a new problem. You know, I always cover new illnesses and new medical conditions. And now we have this, where female athletes are getting nut injuries. Okay, so who was Lil Tay's brother? I probably did this in the wrong order. Somehow I just got, here we go. Who was Lil Tay's brother? Jason Tan. Family reveals 21-year-old brother of 14-year-old media star rapper has died. And this is, I don't know when this is. So aspiring rapper Jason was described as a genius behind the curtain. Slayer claimed that the young girl was being exploited by her older brother. And so he died. The family of Jason Tan has revealed that he died at 21 years old along with his social media star sister, Lil Tay. This is Lil Tay here. Rapper Lil Tay dies at age 14. Father refuses to comment. So 2 family members died at the same time. I don't know who this is, but it's big news and people have been sending this to me. And they're not saying why. And sudden tragic passing, the family says. But her brother died on the same day. And so, you know, a lot of social media stars have dropped like flies. And they're not saying her brother's passing adds an even more unimaginable death to the grief. This outcome was totally unexpected. It's left us all in shock. Her brother's passing adds even more unimaginable depth to our grief. During this time of immense sorrow, we kindly ask for privacy as we grieve with this overwhelming loss, as the circumstances surrounding Claire and her brother's passing are still under investigation. Well, was it a murder-suicide? Was it a murder? Was it 2 heart attacks? Here's her Instagram post. Is she a rapper? Is this her rapping?
This Lil Tay, the youngest flexer of the century. I'm going to be talking about the fight between me, Vicky, and Bad Baby trying to sneak Vicky from the back.
Okay, so that's her. Apparently she's American. She's got some money here.
Message to all y'all broke ass haters. Y'all ain't doing it like Lil Tay. This is why all y'all haters hate me, bitch. This shit cost me.
Okay, so she was a real blessing. Okay, so I was just about to upload this video, and one of my viewers sent me report Lil Tay is alive, blames death hoax on third party compromising her Instagram. She's a horrible person, and the people behind her are horrible. Like her, I watched a few more of her Instagram videos, and she's just a little brat, you know, like talking about how great her life is. I mean, like all the rapper stuff, and like she's saying my sink is more than your rent and things like that. I'd show it to you, but it's just, I don't have time. But she's not a nice, you know, little bratty kid who's being propped up there by her family. And I'm sure they did this on purpose to draw more attention to her because that's what's happened. I didn't know she even existed until today. I never heard of her. And now we all have. So I think they're just really horrible people. Her brother and the family, I don't know who's involved in it, but I don't believe she got hacked, right? And it benefits her and her, you know, whatever she's doing here. Because she's not a legitimate rapper. She's just an annoying kid, a poser. And, you know, they've put her out here. But anyways, I'll maybe cover more of this next time.
UN had a meeting to vote on whether or not food is a human right. All of the countries voted yes except for one country, and I'll give you 0.2 seconds to get yes, it was America. It was America that said no. You should go to all of the parks in America and start planting a bunch of plants that produce food. And don't tell anyone. How much you want to bet after 2 years, once it actually starts to produce food, the government's just going to go and take it all down? The UN.
So, I don't know if that's true or not, but it kind of makes sense that, the UN is whatever, like, America and food. Okay, so this is U.S. Department of State. And this is back in December 22nd, 2003. So this is under John Kerry when he was Secretary of State. U.S. explanation of vote resolution, whatever this is, the right to food, human rights question. Mr. Chairman, although the United States government agrees with much that is stated in the resolution and by its actions has proven its profound commitment to promoting food security around the world, it cannot support the resolution as drafted. As the delegations are aware, the United States has consistently taken the position that the attainment of any right to adequate food or right to be free from hunger is a goal or aspiration to be realized progressively that does not give rise to any international obligations or diminish the responsibilities of the national governments to their citizens. In light of the long-standing view, the current resolution contains numerous objectionable provisions, including inaccurate textual discrimination of the underlying right and unduly positive references both to the General Comment 12 released in May 1999 and the Committee on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights and to certain actions by the Special Rapporteur. I don't know what any of that means, so whatever that is. That was their reason. And we hope that in the future years that the sponsors of this resolution will accommodate our proposals, suggestions, so that we can join in the adoption of a resolution on this tremendously important subject. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. South Carolina seeks payout over contaminated waterways, exposure to forever chemicals. South Carolina's top prosecutor this week filed a suit against some of America's largest companies for knowingly contaminating South Carolina's natural resources and drinking water. And so they're suing DuPont and 3M for these forever chemicals and, that non-stickware stuff and all that stuff, right? We've seen that before with Teflon. I'm not sure if this is going into the lakes or the rivers, groundwater, surface water, wildlife, soil, and sediment. There seems to be more and more of this, of the toxification of the U.S. or the world. Lady Gaga's dad rallies New York City. How did I get North Carolina out of that? Lady Gaga's dad rallies New York City neighbors to fight to manage unruly migrants at hotel, basically have taken over. There is a news report here on page 6.
City struggling to house the thousands of migrants arriving by bus each day here in the city. And it now comes as city officials are demanding the federal government provide the city with more assistance. They need help. Fox 5's Lizette Nunez is live at the Port Authority bus terminal, where we are expecting a few more buses to arrive within the next few minutes. Is that right, Lizette?
Yeah, that's right, Dan. Good morning. We are waiting to see if more buses arrive. We did hear from the city.
So this is, I guess, if DeSantis did one kind, I don't know if he was the guy who originated this, but there are, now red states are busing the immigrants that are coming over, like the southern border, to northern blue states. And, this is kind of an interesting trend because, it's kind of a funny move. Lady Gaga's dad is leading the charge against unruly migrants living near his Upper West Side home and restaurant, griping their flooding a ritzy neighborhood with a constant stream of hookers and other bad behavior. Your daughter's Lady Gaga, right? It was like this when my girls were growing up. If it was like this when my girls were growing up, I wouldn't be living in New York. I don't know why you're living there now. But apparently this is, a new trend. There he is there. Gaga's dad. Bella Hadid gives health update amid painful battle with Lyme disease. Not giving up on myself. If you guys watch my other stuff, she had a lengthy Instagram post. She looks very kind of dudish. There she is. There. You know, I have questions about Lyme disease in terms of being from ticks. Now, how does she get, where was she out where she got a tick bite? She's a city dwelling, model, whatever she is. She's got some giant feet there. And she's all hooked up to this, all these things. How did she get Lyme disease? Where did she get a tick? I mean, does she have a country house or something? And she got a tick bite? Like, I don't believe in the tick story behind Lyme's. Justin Bieber he's got a little puppy there. I mean, it's the patient stuff. There's all that stuff. I doubt that, let's see her Instagram here. I doubt that she's out in the country very much. And so, a tick bite, and it's hard to have a tick bite you and be latched onto you for a long time without noticing it, and all these things. But anyways, Rockaway Beach shark attack victim loses 20 pounds of flesh after a bite, sources say. She's obese. That's how, he took a bite out of her leg and got 20 pounds of flesh. Dianne Feinstein went to the hospital after a bite or fall at home. Spokeswoman says, I'm not laughing at Feinstein. I'm laughing at the last thing. But, they're not covering Dianne Feinstein as much as they are Mitch McConnell. And Dianne Feinstein is in worse shape. They're both in bad shape. Not as bad as this guy. Handsy President Biden brushes bug off Stephanie Abrams' chest during Weather Channel interview. So he's here talking about climate change.
The Paris Climate
And they're in the Grand Canyon.
Accord. We passed a $368 billion climate control facility. We're moving.
We're moving. We're shaking. We're moving.
It is the existential threat to humanity.
So you've already declared that national emergency?
Well, in the practice, you got a bug on you.
Oh, thanks. Appreciate it.
Yeah, that's her shoulder.
See that national emergency?
Practically speaking, yes.
Yeah, there he goes. She's like, what is he doing? Right? He just doesn't get it, right? Well, he's senile. Okay, along with that, this is a video. This doesn't have the best. Well, here it is. Here, let's go back.
North Carolina. And he was a very conservative guy who was very, very...
So it doesn't look like real flesh.
Oh my gosh, that's a mask.
African-American when he got...
Holy cow.
He always had fights.
Definitely kind of looks like a mask over here. The only thing I would say about that is that why put someone in a mask and then act like you're senile, right? Like, why are they dressing somebody up and putting a mask on them so that the person is incompetent mentally? So that would be my one question.
Well, the key to...
They have the technology to do
North
that.
Carolina.
They have this advanced level mask technology and maybe, a voice chat. I don't know. Some sort of Mission Impossible thing. I think they have the technology, and just when we've seen it from movies, to put on, when I showed you those masks that are very realistic. The only issue is, why would he be so bad? If they're going to stick someone in a mask, he could be a lot more mentally competent. Lizzo faces sexual harassment allegations from 6 more former employees. And so Lizzo should be canceled. She sucks, right? She wasn't great. They were celebrating her because she was morbidly obese and that she was not ashamed of it. And, that only goes so far. Her songs suck. Everything sucked about her. And she's not a good person. And she was mean to the people around her. And kind of freaky, too. Whitney Port, I've yet to admit I have an eating disorder, but we'll see a specialist. So that's what she used to look like. And that's what she looks like now. We saw her before. She was on some show called The Hills, I think. It was, but yeah, you got something, right? If it ain't an eating disorder, you got something else. Sandra Bullock's late boyfriend, Brian Randall, seen in last photos before death from ALS. There they are in the car together. I don't know. Biden audience laughs as he mocks Lauren Boebert and Tommy Tuberville. And, it makes it sound like listen to this thing here. They make that sound like he's good at mocking. He's horrible at it. He's horrible at everything.
What Arcosa is doing here is part of a much broader clean energy manufacturing.
He has his yelly JoJo, and he has this, sleepy, I'm barely awake, I'm losing consciousness JoJo.
It's going to happen in big cities and rural communities as well. Like in Colorado, where CS Wind broke ground on what will be the world's largest wind tower.
CS Wind broke ground, and CS Biden broke wind. It depends.
Manufacturing plant. And coincidentally, CS Wind is Congresswoman Lauren Boebert. You know, that very quiet Republican lady? It's in her district.
This is when he gets close to the mic.
Who, along with every other Republican, voted against this bill. And it's making all this possible. And she railed against its passage. But that's okay. She's welcoming it now. When I ran for...
Boy, he's so creepy. He can't even mock good. And mocking isn't that hard. Well, like to those of us, it comes naturally. He just sucks so bad at everything.
I promise to be president for all Americans. Whether you live in a blue state or a red state, I'm going to keep my promise.
He's going to keep his promise to loot as much money from the American treasury as is possible through his son Hunter's art program and through the Ukrainian war. Maui Fire's latest and Big Brother contestant kicked off for Slur Morning Rundown. Why I woke up this morning, there was Twitter recommended me a tweet from one President Joseph R. Biden. And he was him and Jill were expressing their concern for the people in Hawaii. And, I never been to Hawaii, but I, seen pictures and I kind of know what it's like there. And it's a tropical island. And, there's wildfires everywhere in ways that I don't understand. They have drought in Hawaii. It's right on the ocean, right? But anyways, that happened. I got an epic comment here. It's going to be a lot. I'm just putting out so much content this week because of the Long Kennedy videos and what happened in this voiceover I told you about that I'll probably put in the beginning of the video tomorrow, making that video really long. Right? So, whatever I choose to do. And I have a Journey series video I want to make public, but people can't only have so much time in the day to watch things. Before I get to the comment, I woke up last night and I was turning over in bed and I did it wrong somehow. I must have been some deep stupor of a sleep. And I hurt my back, I popped my back. And I was just telling my wife that I don't, my lower back has been bothering me in a couple of years. I think I said it that day, yesterday or the day before. And we were going to go to the chiropractor today. We've been going to the chiropractor every week now since the auto accident. And we're both doing well. We're not really having so many issues. And I hurt it so bad. And I was laying in bed going, man, this is bad. I think I might have really hurt it, really hurt my back. I wouldn't be able to walk or something, right? It was that bad. It felt weird, I twisted it in some way. And, I did a little bit of a stretch. I just sat there for a little bit. And the pain went away. And I have this stretch I do, and I did it in bed. We had to do a couple of stretches for our lower back. And, I went back to sleep, and I woke up, and it was completely better. I know I didn't dream it because I was, conscious of doing some things, I was kind of, it woke me up. It was so intense. But we ended up going to the chiropractor. I got most of this video done before, and I was talking about how this video didn't get published on time last night. What saves me and it makes me able to put out the amount of content I do is being in routine. And when things throw off that routine, or I add more work to that routine, it just messes everything up. You know? And so just thought I'd throw that out there. But I got a comment from somebody, and, I was editing this video, and I thought I'd put it here because I don't want to leave it over till tomorrow. I want to move on from the whole Bobby Kennedy thing. I want to see if he ends up reversing himself in some way. I don't know how it's going to play out. But for right now, my time of supporting of him or being supportive of him is over until like he shows the ability to change, or there's some reason that I see that he's got to reverse himself, and I don't know if he can, because reversing himself would open himself up to charges of being an anti-Semite. But anyways, I want to move on like I usually do after I've covered something in consecutive videos. So this person wrote a long comment, and there are these comments that people write where the complaint they have and the whatever they're saying in the comment, they're demonstrating the reason why they're complaining. Like they're answering their own question, right? They're accusing me of something, or they're saying, why are you doing this? And then they demonstrate a behavior that is the prototypical reason why I have to do this, right? And so let me get to the comment here. I lost it. It was here for a second. So the guy says this: 30 minutes or more of the stream, Paul is making sure that everybody knows he has Jewish friends and had no personal bad experience with any Jews. This is in a video criticizing a politician who does the same with Israel. Paul acknowledges the double standard when it comes to criticism of Jews in Israel, but he still engages in the double standard. He believes that punching... You don't know what I believe. Let me read this again. But when you start saying you think you know what I believe, then you can take a guess, and you can, I do this here where I get into the internal worlds of people, but I'm not good at it. Like you suck at it, right? When you speculate about people's motivation, when I gave you my motivation, at least part of it, but I want to read this whole thing and then I can get into it all at once. And so it says he believes that by punching rhetorically Jew haters, in quotes, and massaging the message with thousands of caveats will save him from the accusations of anti-Semitism, all while pointing out how embarrassing and discrediting it is for RFK to do it. So I assume this guy is still an RFK fan, or he's somebody who is negative towards Jewish people. One of the two, or both. But the more important piece is he gets it completely wrong, and I told him why I was doing it, right? Let me read the rest of it. My intention is not to attack Paul, but I don't see how he doesn't realize that he's doing exactly what he criticizes RFK Jr. for doing. I'm not an RFK fan. I wouldn't vote for him, but I agree with that on 2 or 3 important issues. He is the best candidate, which makes me think that you protest too much. And then the person says here, let me get to I had to do it in 2 different, when someone leaves such a long comment that I have to break it up, that means it's too long a comment. Why wasn't RFK accused of being I don't even know what this word is, the statement that spawned the accusation of anti-Semitism mentioned Ashkenazi Jew and Chinese. I guess it's I don't know. Why did only Jews stop screaming anti-Semitism? Maybe I misread Paul and I don't understand where he's coming from. Well, you should have thought about that before leaving this comment. Just found it curious and wanted to point it out. Again, why would you want to point something out when you're not sure about it? Like, why would you do that? Like, why waste my time and other people's time and your time when you're not sure? Like you should be, I'm not saying being 100% sure, but you see something and let me go through it, because I said some of it in the video, but the person starts out the comment. I got to pull the first one back up. 30 minutes or more of stream is Paul making sure that everyone knows he has Jewish friends. So it isn't that long. It's, part of me talking about it. And I give the reason. I'll give, one of the reasons I gave, and I'll give other reasons. But this is why I have to say things. Again, and I can talk for hours. I could have made a whole video about that, right? And I'm now making, adding this on to this video. Because people in the truth community, by and large, suck at these kind of things. They misinterpret things. They hear things the way they want to hear them. They're not very good at listening. They're not very good at comprehension. I mean, this is all of America, but truthers in particular, they're paranoid and they're, finger pointers, right? And this is why I was talking about in my first video how people in the truth community, can't get along. And, I would include myself in that description for different reasons, being a loner and, we are negative as a group. But this is what sucks about the truth community, that I have to over-explain things, and no matter how much I explain them, you won't understand them. So it becomes pointless, right? Some of you guys get it. And if you don't get it, you don't hit the panic button and start accusing people of stuff, right? People like that suck to be around. Whatever way I was like that as a person, I've learned not to do that. To immediately, when you're feeling bummed out or you're feeling angry or frustrated, you don't lash out at other people, which is a good thing. So my wife doesn't have to suffer that, or the people in my life. I've learned not to do that, to blame other people just because I feel bad or I don't understand something, immediately jump to some paranoid conclusion and accuse somebody of something that isn't true. Like just being patient and listening and recognizing, why bother even saying this? Like, why bother even saying that? What's the point of even saying this? What? That you're like some mastermind, you were able to crack the code and you got me, and that I'm being hypocritical because I'm doing the exact same thing as RFK Jr. when I handed it to you on a silver platter. Because if you go back and listen to the video and all these videos, I talk about my motivation for saying that. Whenever I talk about people of a demographic like this, there's several reasons that I will say something ahead of time as a qualifier. And one of the reasons for this specifically is I don't want the Jew haters to come to my channel. I don't want them to think it's time that I'm opening the doorway for them to say why Jewish people suck. And the one problem I have with them, I have multiple problems. One, they don't take personal responsibility. But the other problem they have is that they generalize all Jewish people. Because what we're talking about is a leadership here. Not every Jewish person, because there's groups of Jewish people that are appalled by the way the Palestinians are being treated. There's political division in Israel like every other country, right? Like when you hear a certain level of rhetoric coming out of Israel, and Beatty is like a right-wing, whatever the party he's in, and there's an opposition that's softer. Like Beatty's Benjamin Netanyahu is a hard ass. And I think there's at least two political parties, obviously two. There might be more. But he's in the crush them aggressive group. So when people in foreign countries hear Biden talking or Trump talking, do they think that Trump and Biden represent all of America? And so if you hear something from one segment of the Jewish population you don't like, or there is, a group of them, and you could divide them as calling some Zionists or some whatever, whatever they are, they don't represent every Jewish person in the world. And that's where dumbasses, let's say there is some reality to, a legitimacy to the idea that Chinese people are responsible for COVID, that it came out of a Wuhan lab or intentionally leaked. And you are a dumbass and you go see a couple of Korean people and beat the crap out of them because of that, right? Like stuff like that actually happens. And I don't want that on my channel. And I make that clear because there's a distinction here. You can criticize leadership, you can criticize certain groups of people, but you can't criticize every person who belongs to that group. That's just lazy thinking. And especially if you're a piece of poop yourself, which most of the people who are hateful are. People who have hate in them. And I talk about hate, right? And so that was one of the things I said when I was describing my own experience with Jewish people for that reason. I said it. This is the reason I'm saying this. But there are other reasons. And it's dumbasses like this who jump to conclusions and just can't take things. This person's complaining about the amount of time I spent on that part of the video. And at the same time is calling for more explanation, right? And like I said, there's a 30-minute or 18-minute narrative, I'm not sure how long, that I did last night. That's one of my more channeled, like very pure, very clean, higher level conscious explanation of the Kennedy thing from my perspective, which like I said, I'm going to add that to my video tomorrow. But then there's the other kind of levels of this thing. So here's some more of my motivation for saying those things in the beginning. Before I get into that, let me just say this. I've had in the past comments where people said black people wanted to be slaves. They were better off being slaves, and they actually liked being slaves. And then along with that, there's people who said, when having to deal with, these are English Christian people who can't take responsibility for colonialism and the evil that they brought into this world and the abuse of other peoples. And they blame the Jewish people for slavery, like they were somehow tricked into it. Or a lot of times you hear Christian, like Anglo-Christian people, again, not all of them, some of them that come here, there's lots of them, right? Makes up, a large portion of American white people come from England and Europe, someplace in Europe. And, not all of them believe this, right? So it's generalization, right? It's just some of them. But a minority of them believe that they're not responsibility. There's no responsibility of their ancestors taking slaves or what they did to the indigenous people, or they believe somehow they're better than those people. They believe that, there's the manifest destiny and they had every right to take the Native Americans' land and conquer America and all these other atrocities. Like there's no sense there was any wrongdoing there. And so that's what I'm talking about. And I don't want those people here because they're not truthers, right? We don't have anything really in common. And when I open the door for them to criticize Jewish people, they can't wait to do it, right? In some way. And it hurts all of us because of the victim consciousness narrative and the stuff to do with community guidelines. So let me talk about that. I've never been accused of anti-Semitism, but I've had a few Jewish people sort of hint at, I don't want to say in a passive-aggressive way, like a almost threatening way, that they're trying to silence me. It happened to me with this take here. There was a guy who lives, I think, in Israel, and he had commented on my channel for a number of videos, maybe 10 times. This is probably 5, 6, 7 years ago. And I made my video about the big event that happened in 2001 in New York City. And I included some stuff about Israel and this stuff here. And he left some comments, sort of argued with me, and this was his way of trying to make it so that I wouldn't say things like this in the future. And then I must have banned him or disappeared. I never heard from him again. And then he showed up again and said, we talked about this a long time ago. And have you ever been to Israel? Right? Have you ever been to this region? That was his new tact in trying to get me to silence me, right? And the stuff that I was saying, I don't need to go to Israel for. I mean, some of these things are just historical facts, or at least one story of history. Of course, history is history is his story. It's not factual, but there's enough information out that I can say these things and have, reasonable confidence in my assessment, right? And then there was a second person who said she watched my videos for 8 years, and she's never been this offended. You guys probably heard that. I covered it on this channel in her comment. And both people used the same strategy. It was to ask me if I've ever been to the region, which is stupid because I could go to Israel on vacation and have a great time and say, oh, well, what a great country, right? Like you mean go to the West Bank and Gaza Strip and go into Palestine where there's, military and there's, tension and, Why would I do that, right? So I can comment about it on YouTube instead of, even if I went there at one time and I saw one thing on one side or one thing on the other, like that wouldn't, if I lived there, it'd be something different. But even then, you're limited. People don't know what's going on in their neighborhoods. People don't know what's going on the other side of town. I'm not an expert in the towns that I live in. I don't know everything that's going on there, right? Like, say I live in that town, and there's never, I know there isn't a crack house, like, I don't know. Maybe there's a meth lab down the street. I don't even know, right? I don't know what's going on in my neighbor's house or whatever. It's a stupid argument, right? Of course, when you're involved in something, you have more knowledge of it, but I'm not going to be an expert on the Palestinian and the Israeli conflict. But anyways, this person saying that I was tampering was giving both sides of the story or making this caveat so that I would avoid being accused of being an anti-Semite was wrong. I'm not some famous person, but I often do this where if there's some question on whether it could be me attacking a so-called protected group, I do this for YouTube to avoid a possible strike so that people see that I'm not some... It's very easy for people to put people in categories. And like I was saying earlier for this teacher that looked like he was a liberal person, seemed to be kind of a liberal person. And he had, it's more powerful when you come from a group. Like if I can say that I grew up and I had lots of Jewish friends, I grew up in a school where there's lots of Jewish kids. And, one of my favorite people, this guy Fred, who was the preceptor that started me in Saj Marg, was of Jewish descent. And one of the few people I have, he's not the perfect person and lots of people had complaints about him. But for me, it was great. Like his being a preceptor for me, and it's hard to get into that whole thing with Saj Marg, but the preceptor and the, person going to their house for sittings and group meditations and things. And, he was always telling me stories about going to India. He helped me prepare to go to India and things like this. And he was a very helpful person. He did right by me. He was a very influential person in my life, right? And somebody I'm really grateful for. And so you can't accuse me of hating Jewish people. You can't. Like you could, but I undermine that argument. Like if you're trying to say, oh, this is just some right-wing Republican Christian person who hates Jews, they can't do that. Like, I'm given enough information, so they might try to do that. But, people always want to dismiss other people. They want to put you in a category to justify their treatment of you. And they did this with Kennedy, right? He went into that, that Senate hearing, that congressional hearing, and the Democrats were lined up to falsely accuse him of being an anti-Semitic racist person, racist against blacks and Chinese. And this was a strategy, right? And so, for me, who cares? Like, I don't have that big of an audience, and I'm not a famous person, and there's nothing like that, right? But in terms of them being able to deny my perception of what's going on and hear something that I have to say, they, if I give enough information, it becomes that much more difficult for them to do that, to put me in some sort of box to dismiss me. Like when somebody says, oh, you're just jealous, right? Like if you're criticizing a celebrity. They're trying to dismiss what you're saying because they don't want to deal with it. And so the narrative that Kennedy was laying out was that there are all these people around the world that hate Jewish people. And in America, he wants to make it part of his platform to get the word out and say the Jews are actually an example, a guiding light. And Israel is a guiding light, and that we should all be looking up to them, right? So that's what Kennedy was saying. And what Kennedy was saying and what they were agreeing with is that Israel is been given to the Israeli people by God. Kennedy didn't say that, but that's one of the things they say. But if you don't believe that, there's some historical precedent for them that they occupied that land. They were on that land at some point. And there's holy land there and all these things. And that the land belongs to them. Or at least they've been on that land even after they were kicked out. There were some Jewish people on that land for, thousands of years before Christ. And they, for some reason, people just hate Jewish people. No one knows why. That different groups all over the world just all hate Jewish people. And they're the victims of hate. They've done nothing to deserve it. And right now they're in a situation, they're on a small piece of land, and everybody around them hates them, and not only wants them off the land, but wants them to be exterminated from this planet. That they want to kill every Jew, and that this happened with Hitler, and there's just all these things, and the Jews constantly are being in the situation where they're victims of unjustified hate, and that all these people are, like what was happening in Europe and pushing them to Palestine in the first place, and that people just hate them for no reason, and that they're all, that they're victims of this hate, and they're great people, and they're sweet people, and they have no other choice but to be hyper vigilant with their security and their their military security. They have to be on guard because people just always want to get them. So they need like America's support, because if America turned its back on them, they would somehow be wiped out because they're the victims here. And aside from that, they have to be hyper vigilant that if anybody just looks at them cross-eyed, they need to call those people out on that and accuse them of being anti-Semitic and be aggressive with them, either legally or in the newspaper, and make sure the person apologizes, like with just what happened with Jamie Foxx. And it's okay for them to falsely accuse somebody like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. or Jamie Foxx or anybody else, even if they don't have all the information. It's okay because they're under attack all the time and they're perpetual victims, and that they get to do all these behaviors. And that's the issue, because we see it all the time. They falsely accuse somebody of anti-Semitism, and they bring up the Holocaust, and they use guilt and shame. They're not the only people to use guilt and shame in terms of like the leadership or culturally. Like if you watch the Everybody Loves Raymond show, Raymond's mom is Italian or whatever she is. She's Italian. Is very manipulative in this way. And you have a lot of old school people, Catholic guilt. And I see this with the Indian culture quite a bit, where, they have Indian people who've come to America and are doing well financially, are expected to send money back to their families. And, why aren't you visiting? And they just use guilt and shame and all these things to manipulate behaviors. And I'm against all of that. That's got to go. Like that's not truth. Emotional manipulation, emotional blackmail, and victim consciousness has got to go. And it's so prevalent now. And to the point where you can't criticize anything, even if it's, again, some criticism is bogus, and it's just, there's the false accusation, hateful, projection level of being a critical piece of boop, where you're just always blaming everybody else and lashing out at everybody else and lashing out at whole groups of people. But then there are behaviors and things, abusive behaviors, in this case, abusive behaviors towards the Palestinian people, that you can't just say, the Holocaust or any of these things to excuse your behaviors, right? And dismiss people as being, that all people are just hateful towards Jews, and that you have to be on guard all the time and hyper vigilant, because if somebody just shows an inkling of criticism towards Israel or any of these things, that you're going to jump on them and say you're being anti-Semitic, right? That's just wrong, and it's not working. It's backfiring. People have more and more distaste for it, victim consciousness and the rest of it. And those of us who see it, I see it on every level. You have white people feel like they're victims now, and maybe always felt like that. And then you have all the other groups all claiming to be victims. And, again, which is what I said, if you believe in God, then it comes from God. And figure out why God is allowing this to happen, or God is creating the circumstance for this to happen, or why your soul has chosen for you to experience something. As a Jewish person, as a black person, as a white person, as a man, as a woman. These things, that your soul chose your body, your demographic, the family that you were born into, the circumstances of your birth, and all these things. It's just part of a plan. God has a plan. Your soul has a plan. And you're not a victim of your soul's plan. Your soul is, put these obstacles in front of you for a reason. And the sooner you come to a place of gratitude for them, the better it is. And so this, constant, there's false accusations, and there's lashing out at people because you're a piece of boop and you don't want to deal with your own suckiness. But then there's, the legitimate criticism that people receive. And, you can take it or leave it or whatever it is. You decide to dismiss it like, many people in Israel, the people who are warlike, will say that the Muslims and the Palestinian people have been trying to kill them for years. And that they're the victims and these other people are just bad people because of their religion and their inherent hatred of Jews, right? And so when you can explain why you're not one of those people, I'm not a Muslim person, I'm not a right-wing Christian, I'm not a person that has some personal bad experience with Jewish people or a Jewish person, that I have some, axe to grind, because I don't cover it that much. What I don't like, and I see it so often, is this constant victim consciousness you see from the Jewish leadership, from the ADL and all these other groups. And you can justify it, but it isn't working with the rest of us. Like, we're tired of hearing about it, right? Like, how long are you going to talk about the Holocaust? How long are you going to talk about, all these things? And, again, as just as a group, and I'm just saying that as giving feedback, right? There was a video clip out there I saw a long time ago where a Jewish woman was talking about, using the victim consciousness as a weapon. She said, this is our secret weapon. And when you use victim consciousness to manipulate other people's behavior and stop them from speaking their mind or speaking their truth or, whatever it is, right? It's always backfires. It's a way of forcing something on somebody else. And this view that Kennedy supported, he just went all in on it, that the Palestinian people are just bad and they have no right to be upset about what happened in terms of them once being a country called Palestine that's now a country called Israel. And I was just pointing that out. There's enough evidence out there to show that the Palestinians have a legitimate grief or gripe, right? Not that I support victim consciousness and we all have to deal with what we have to deal with. The same thing with the Native American people and black people who are slaves, right? There's wrongs that have been done, but oftentimes these same groups were doing those things to other people. Like black people in Africa had slaves and sold slaves to white people. So that's, Native American people had slaves and they conquered, there's tribes conquering each other. They all had their violent tendencies as well, right? And so, but what happened to them is, an atrocity, and it's just wrong. And, there should have been some sense in the white people part who invaded America and took slaves, like, this is wrong. But they didn't have it, right? And, there's been this kind of behavior going on back and forth for, centuries and, thousands of years, not centuries. But everyone wants to be a victim, right? And so within that framework, and I eventually had to comment on something like this. I was going to have to comment on the Robert F. Kennedy thing because I had been supporting him. And I talk about this in this other video in a much more eloquent way, like a higher level of consciousness. I was in a higher state when I made that part. But in terms of this commenter, like, I know what I'm doing. And yeah, maybe it's difficult for you to sit through or whatever I said that triggered you. You can leave. You're welcome to leave. You don't have to be here. Like, again, I say that all the time. But I conduct my affairs the way I conduct my affairs. And there's reasons why I do stuff. But to just, close the door on this, this boop, insert your own insult here. For that person to accuse me of doing the exact same thing Kennedy did, it wasn't. Because it's true that I had Jewish friends. It's true that I had a preceptor who was Jewish. I didn't make any of that stuff up. And so there's nothing that I said that wasn't true. And nobody accused me of anything. I was just doing what I was doing for the reasons I've just said. And the stuff that I said about the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, again, I don't know if it's 100% accurate what I said, but it's, a lot truer than what Kennedy said, right? And like I said, I'm not an expert in the subject, and this isn't really about my commenting on it. Wasn't about commenting on Palestine and Israel. It was about Kennedy doing something that was out of character for him, where he's usually a person who's fair-minded and all the rest of it. And he might believe what he actually said. I don't know if he believed it or not, whether he was pandering, I don't know. But I wasn't pandering. I wasn't doing any of these things. I was being delicate and surgical in what I was saying. If you can't appreciate that, then, You know, instead of just throwing crap up against the wall, right? Just go somewhere else. You don't have to comment. You don't have to be here. You don't have to listen. Like I say this all the time. I'm not, making you be here. And so if you don't like something, you're welcome to leave, right? I don't know how many times I have to say it, right? It's, it's up to you to figure out, right, what's, whether you want to be here or not. Like, you're always welcome to choose to spend your time doing something else. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely reporting from the Apocalypse and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.